Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us at UVM's Continuing in Distance Education webinar about our Project Management Certificate program today. We're so glad that you're here. We have a full agenda today, and we have one of our former project management students, Susan, joining us remotely, so we're going to get to her feedback in a few minutes. And we have one of our lead instructors, Anne-Marie Curley, with us also today. So we're going to be able to hopefully answer your questions about our Project Management Certificate and encourage you to consider this program and the benefits of it. So let's dive in. My name is Nicola Willier-Fenton. I'm the Content Marketing Manager at the University of Vermont's Continuing and Distance Education Department. Really glad you're able to join us today. We will go over our introductions. We'll take a look at the different topics because our project management seminar are one day, or mostly a day. I think it ends around 4 or 4:30. And the topics vary on the different days that you were there. So most people do the entire program, but there are opportunities to come in on certain seminar days if there's a particular topic that you really are interested in. So we'll talk about that. We're going to tap into some of Anne-Marie's expertise in project management and give you some insights today as to how she approaches and how she instructs in the course about planning a successful project. And we're going to toss questions over to Susan as often as possible because we always feel like it's the best perspective to hear from a former student as to what that student got out of the program. And as I mentioned in the chat box, please put your questions in there throughout the presentation. I will do my best to keep an eye on those questions and either ask Anne-Marie for her feedback or Susan, or we'll answer those as well. We also have a team here helping us with our webinar, and Kelly will put, if there's specific questions that you have that we can't answer today, we often will have one of our staff members put some answers and some links into the chat box. So keep an eye out for that information today as well. So let's get started. So I'd like to introduce Anne-Marie. Thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. It's good to be here.
Yes, and you've had a long history with project management, and you see a little bit more of Anne-Marie's credentials up on the slide here, but really working across a variety of different industries with the focus on how to manage things successfully from projects, I would imagine. So we're going to learn a little bit more about how she approaches things. And joining us via webcam is Susan Thompson, who is a project manager in the project management office at Vermont Energy Investment Corp. Here in Vermont, and she has been with that organization for 13 years. And she focuses, which was very applicable to the course, she focuses on strategic planning, strategic project management, and partnership development. So we're going to hear from Susan in just a few minutes. So I want to toss over to Anne-Marie. I think looking at Susan's position is focused on project management, but you probably have a huge variance of folks that want to get better at managing things in their lives or in their work. Who are the types of folks do you think this course is right for?
So we see a lot of folks coming in with, they're very new to project management, and then some people have been managing projects for a while but haven't really had formal training, or maybe went through some formal training some time ago but want to refresh it. And we blend the concepts for all of those people, and we make our workshops very actionable. So everybody walks out with what they need to be successful and carry it forward.
And I think that's a great point that maybe we'll toss over to Susan. So let's take her mic off mute for a sec so we can hear you, Susan. What was appealing to you? What was kind of going on with you and your point of your career that you felt like this program was what you needed at that time?
Well, I never really had any formal project management training. So, and I'd been doing strategic planning and managing some high-level projects and leading teams and collaborating cross-functionally across the organization. And I realized I needed a few more tools in my toolbox to be successful so that we remained organized, on point, aligned, and achieved the results we needed.
And do you feel like you got those tools from this program?
Oh, yes. Yep. I'm using them every day.
We're going to dive into that a little bit more because when, which I'll share with Anne-Marie and the folks listening, when Susan and I were doing a call a few weeks ago, just talking about this opportunity to share with students, she held up some of her tools from the seminar. And when did you take the project management seminar?
A year ago this spring, so just last spring.
So the materials are incredibly relevant if she's still pulling them back out a year from now. So I want to just touch on quickly the different topics because as I mentioned, this is a little bit different than some other programs or some courses that you might consider. Would you maybe just walk us through the structure and what happens during the day, and then we can look at those different topics.
Sure. So I'm the first instructor, so first out of the series of 5 sessions. So for my first session, everyone in the class is really getting to know each other. And so we really focus our first session on coming together as a team, getting to know each other, understanding what everybody wants to get out of the sessions. And the flow of the day is, on session 1 is really working together as part of our teams. And then on session 2, we start to work on our own projects. So, but everybody's really getting to know each other, getting to learn how everybody else approaches problem solving. And that combined group thinking is very powerful for the students who walk out of the class.
Yeah, I bet. And I always see these kinds of, whether it's an online course or an in-person course, there's always networking opportunities. Did you feel that with the group that you were working with, Susan, as well?
Yeah, there was definitely some networking, but there's a lot of material, and we cover a lot in each of the days. So lunchtime, and maybe one of the instructors had some breakouts, but yes, you meet new people for sure, but that's not the main focus.
Right, but it's always, I think, an added benefit as well. So I want to just talk about, so Anne-Marie teaches the first and the second. Yep. And then we have the following seminars with the different topics of managing risk and difficult projects, managing teamwork, and advanced tools and techniques for managing projects. And so I think this next slide is interesting, and I know there's a lot of information on there, but really trying to pull out in each of these different seminar days the outcomes, the potential outcomes for you as a participant. And could you touch on, since the first 2 are your area of expertise, what are you hoping that they leave with as an actionable outcome for them?
So I realize these sessions are on Friday at the end of the week, and people come in and it's a good change of pace for them. So I really want to make sure that at the end of the day, they walk out with clear actions, that when they go into the office Monday morning, they've got something that they can apply right out of the gate.
That's great.
So we take time. So we work through project management overview, really understanding the basics, understanding why we need to care about managing and leading projects successfully, why it matters, and really have them at the end of the day work through a list of actions that they can crank open on Monday morning. For people who have their laptops with them, I actually take time to have them block out time in their calendar to do daily planning, so that that's already set up for them the following week to be successful. And then in session 2, they bring their own projects to work on. So we review the status of their project across, good practices, and they come away with a set of gaps and actions, and then they prioritize those actions at the end of the day on my second day, and walk back on Monday morning with a clear set of actions to move their project forward. So it's so day to day, there's clear actions that they walk away with. You don't have to do all of the 5 seminars in order to get that benefit.
That's really amazing, to go through a seminar, because I know probably folks listening to as well, we've all sat through a variety of different workshops and different seminars, and to be able to go from a Friday to a Monday to actionable items at work is really outstanding. Susan, let's talk about your experience with that as well. As I said, you kind of held up a piece of paper and some toolkits that you had, and I don't know if you have that with you today, but yep, she does. So, what is that? And then could you elaborate on some of what Anne-Marie has been sharing in terms of what did you gain on those particular days that was actionable for you back in your role?
Right. Well, on the first session, I'll tell you what this is first. So this is just my favorite slides from the decks that Anne-Marie shares at the end. So you get to go home or back to your desk at work with these 2 amazing, really valuable slide decks. I'm hearing interference. I don't know if you guys.
No, you sound okay to us.
Okay. And so these are my favorite slides, which I refer to daily when I'm working the plan, creating a plan and working the plan. And the actionable tasks or learnings from the first session and the second session with Anne-Marie, there are so many. So, but what's really good is through both of those sessions with Anne-Marie, we are working on a project I mean, you're always thinking about a project that you're working on and applying it as you go through the slide deck with her. Just from how to launch and kick off a new project by chartering a team and stakeholder management and stakeholder alignment and how do you develop a project plan? And then Anne-Marie always says, develop the project plan and then work the plan. So it's, we're always using that here back at BEIC. We're always saying that on the team, like develop the plan, let's work the plan. And working the plan is not always easy, as we all know. So there are a lot of tools and templates and a lot of learnings that you can refer to.
Great. That's really great feedback. Do you have any thoughts on what she just said? And that's probably nice to hear too, that she's working the plan.
So it's the greatest compliment, I think, to just know that the material that you're coaching people with resonates with them, and it's so useful and actionable day to day, nearly a year later after she's taken the training.
Yeah.
And she's using the templates and she's got the slides, and she's able to have those conversations with her stakeholders that prior to this it was challenging to have. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and I think that's really wonderful perspective. I really appreciate that, Susan. And hopefully that gives some of our folks who are listening today some idea of the outcomes and the potential benefit to you as well. I do see a couple questions coming in. Brent asked how many seats are left in the program and when is the sign-up deadline. I'm going to have Kelly share that in the chat box, so just hang in there just one second. I know that we're coming up closer to the deadline, but I know we do have some time. But back to Brent's point, there are limited seats, and so we'll get back to you on that. And thank you, Mary, was sharing some of the audio concerns, but we do record this as well, and so we will send it out to everyone who is with us today. And so I just want to touch on the incredible value that Anne-Marie and her project management sessions provide, but also looking at and some of the things that Susan just said, that managing a project is not always easy. And so I love that there's this opportunity to take that realization and unpack it a little bit more in managing risk and difficult projects on the third time of the session, managing teamwork, because it really is about people, resources. You can't work the plan without the people. And then some of those advanced tools and techniques for managing a project. And we have been hearing from Susan a lot. I know Susan has to get going because she's got another busy project that she's jumping in on. But before we get into Anne-Marie's advice on planning successful projects, Susan, I just want to ask you, for the folks that are listening today, why would you encourage them to do this program in particular?
If you're looking to fine-tune your skills in project management, this is a great course. You will come away with lots of tools, techniques, and support. I'm able to stay in touch with Anne-Marie, and she fosters that engagement with her students. And I'm not as in touch with the other professors of the course, but they delivered really good material, risk management. It's just the full snapshot of a project and what needs to be done and how to, take a project from initiation to close. And closing a project is a task that needs to be done. That's one thing that I, take away. Like we finish projects, but do we ever officially finish a project and close it out? Some people do, sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. But just being really consistent with how you are executing projects and managing stakeholders.
And those are the tools that you feel like you really got as a result of this program.
Mm-hmm.
That's really great. Thank you, Susan. Thank you so much for that. I know you have to zip off, so we'll say goodbye to you. And thank you again for joining us today. And so we're going to dive in. Thanks, Susan. We're going to dive in a little bit more. So, okay, give us a glimpse as to how you do this successfully. And I know you've got a couple key questions that you encourage the ask before they start, right? Walk us through a little bit of what we're seeing here.
Well, so I find that a lot of project managers or a lot of junior managers jump into projects and just start doing.
Yeah, they just jump.
So they get, somebody asks them for something and they just say, sure, I'll go get that, right? And they really want to be helpful and they want to help move the organization forward. But that doesn't necessarily help the organization, you have to be able to step back and say, okay, tell me why you need that. What's the compelling why here? What are you really trying to solve? What's the problem that you've got? Where's your bottleneck? And really understand then who needs to be involved to help answer that situation, solve that problem, and who do you need around the table to help give you more information. So just taking that time up front to really think about what you're doing, why you're doing it, and also I think asking yourself if this is the right time to do it. And that's one of the areas that I see executive managers and teams having struggles with, is that there's so much work to do. There are so many priorities, and they often come up with there's new ideas that come up, and somebody asks for this and asks for that, and they want to be able to accommodate it, but now might not be the right time. So you've got to be able to assess, do we have the resources? Do we have the rest of the prerequisites we need in place? Do we have the right people in place? Do we have the budget to do this properly? Is this really the true problem we need to solve for our organization right now? And just taking that time up front is really important.
One of the things that I see too, and I have no doubt that you do as well, is the plethora of tools available. And it gets almost like overwhelming with the options, and try this one and try this one. And how do you help people ask the questions maybe as to, is that the right tool right now as well?
Yeah, in terms of the actual products or software that they want to
There's
use.
so many different things.
There's so much information, there's so much distraction, and a lot of folks think that a tool is going to solve their problem. So they ask for tools, and I see some IT departments in particular answering that ask and saying, yes, we'll get you that tool, here you go. And the tool never really solves the problem, because the problem is something else. It's usually data or process or who's doing the work or clarity or timing. So it's really just, again, stepping back and analyzing, what is it that you're trying to achieve? Why do you need to achieve it? What's the impact if you don't achieve it? And then what are your options? And often there's an array of options, but taking that time to really think through their options. I mean, one of the powerful pieces, I think, is that all of the instructors have day jobs, right? So we're just not all in training. So I manage projects as well. And in the summer, I got called in by a client who had worked with a vendor. The vendor had sold them on this great product that they needed to install, and they said, well, bring a team, it's going to be easy, we'll help you through it. But the vendor came in, they did not have a great plan, they didn't have a great methodology, the client didn't have an experienced project manager on their side, and the project slipped and sort of slid itself into production 6 months later than intended. And when they went live, it really disrupted the entire organization. They were out of action in the system for 5 weeks. They lost some key people, and the cost to the organization was tremendous. And this isn't like a one-off story. These stories happen all the time. And I think as I work with these teams and organizations, people are overwhelmed, they're stressed, they're trying to do the right thing. And I think you have to be able to just step back from it and really think about what you're doing, thinking about the priorities, think about how it lines up with the strategy of the organization, make sure you're doing the right work at the right time, and then be equipped. And this class, I think, really equips people to be able to go back out and ask those questions from their sponsors, from their superiors, from their stakeholders, and say, wait, I'm going to challenge you on that. And we give them the tools, we equip them with how to ask the questions.
Yeah, and that's so valuable, because I think that, to your point, we see it all the time in our organizations. It's good intent, but maybe not always good project management.
Yep.
And so, great perspective. Thank you so much for that. And I think this slide probably reiterates some of the things that Anne-Marie was just saying, that project management is 90% communication, 10% preparing to communicate. And I think, too, I've seen this, and we've all seen this. 1 out of 5 projects is unsuccessful due to ineffective communication. And I feel like I was in a meeting earlier, and it was interesting because somebody was saying, we communicate, but we don't always gather around the right things to communicate about.
Right.
And so there's lots of communication happening, but
in
not
many different tools.
The right communications or answering the right questions. Has that been your experience as well?
Yes, asking the right questions, answering the question fully, taking time rather than reacting, but also being clear and really thinking about, this goes hand in hand with what we call the stakeholders, people who are involved or impacted by the project or by the outcome of the project. You really want to make sure that they're involved all the way through the project, and we have a really solid communication plan in place for how we're going to work with them, how we're going to build relationships with them, how we're going to collaborate with them, and the same with the team. We need to be able to bring the team together as a cohesive team and be able to work together to resolve whatever it is we're trying to resolve or deliver whatever we're trying to deliver. And communication really is number one. It's everything that we need to do.
Yeah. And I think it often doesn't have that value if you haven't had some training.
Yes.
You know, I think that's not, I think we tend to communicate, we know that that's valuable, but we don't necessarily know how important it is for the project to be successful and the right ways to communicate. And so it sounds like you really give folks some tools to be able to do that and to understand how to do that to the best of the ability. So that's really, really wonderful. And I know we've had some questions in terms of signups and various different things. So this slide gives you some of the dates for the different seminar sessions and the cost and some discount opportunities for some of our local affiliations as well. And as I mentioned, we will send this out because oftentimes there's professional development funds, maybe at your employment, and you want to share this opportunity. And so this would be a great webinar recording to share and so that you can see the expertise of some of the instructors that you're getting in the program. I also wanted to share, this is a really interesting opportunity that we're doing for the first time. And this is a project management, it's a workshop. It's specifically geared towards nonprofit organizations. And this is it's a half day, 8 o'clock to 11:30 on Thursday, February 13th. So that one's coming up and you can see that price there. The location is in Burlington. We can let you know more information on that. And so I think you're seeing who should attend. It's that kind of list of people that may have to be putting forth a project and how would it benefit you to learn a few more tools in your toolbox for project management at your nonprofit organization. And do you want to, because I know you know these folks very well from our Project Management Institute here in the Burlington area. What would you, I think we get this question a lot too. Would it, in some of our different courses, is that right for a nonprofit or does it need to be a for-profit? And so what do you think is the value of a workshop that's focused on project management in a nonprofit environment? Is that, to get that granular, do you think that's really beneficial?
I do think it really helps you dial in on the problems and constraints that they face,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Which are unique to their
Nonprofit,
way,
yeah.
right? Corporations are very different in what they try to do. Nonprofit have constraints that they need to work around.
Yeah.
So having a cohort come together that has the same background and the same experience and be led through concepts of how to apply techniques to help improve their success rate, I think is very powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the first time that we've offered this. And so we're really looking forward to seeing how the success of this program and hopefully doing more of these smaller tailored programs for project management and nonprofit organizations. Are there additional questions? I'm seeing a few questions in there about the seats, and hopefully we've answered that for you today. If there's anything else that we can answer or that you would like to ask Anne-Marie, please put that into the chat box. But while we're giving you that couple of minutes, I'm just wondering, Anne-Marie, what do you think is I know we've talked about the outcomes and the actionable items, but as you mentioned, we're all so busy and it's a little daunting to think about taking, 5 Fridays out of that daunting schedule that people already have. What's the value sometimes in thinking about giving yourself that opportunity to take the space to learn and to continue your own development?
So I really think that you have to step back and give yourself the space to learn something new. And I have a slide in the first day's deck, and it says an hour of planning saves 10 hours of doing. And I think that applies to this course too, because if you can step back and give yourself the space to really learn something new, when you go back into the office and start to use these techniques in conversations and in your interactions with the team and with the stakeholders and with your clients, you'll have so much better conversations, much more robust conversations. You'll be so much more effective. The entire team will be elevated by your ability to lead them in a better way. So an hour of planning saves 10 hours of doing. It's worth its time.
And if we could ever equate that to, 5 or 6 hours of learning probably would save you almost a lifetime of doing and more effective doing in the
Yeah, more
office. So, and in your project. So I really appreciate that perspective, because I think it's important for all of us as, busy working professionals, and we have busy lifestyles, to try to give ourselves the permission to take a step back and really learn how can we improve what we're doing. And so we do have a question from Jessica. In your experience, or based on what you've heard from colleagues, does having the formal project management certificate hold much weight in the field? Do employers value their certificate and their staff?
So I think it shows that you really want to develop your craft,
Yeah.
and that you really want to invest in yourself, and you're putting yourself out there to learn this, and this is where you want your career path to go. And if you tie that in along with your much more effective project management skills when you go back to the office, it builds credibility in the space.
Yeah.
So I do think it is important. I think, some people ask about the PMP and whether
Right.
the PMP is important. It's very similar. So, the PMP is a lot more material. I think this is a good entryway for if you wanted to do a project management professional certificate later, you could do that. But this is very actionable.
Yeah.
So this is a smaller set of material, very, very actionable material that's going to allow you to start building your credibility immediately when you go back to your office. So I do think it's got tremendous value from that perspective.
Building your credibility and more effective projects immediately when you go back to the office from a Friday to a Monday. So that's amazing. Okay, so it looks like we're in pretty good shape, and we're going to wrap up here in a few minutes. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this afternoon. Hopefully we've encouraged and inspired you to consider the Project Management Professional Certificate Program here at the University of Vermont. As we mentioned in the slide earlier, signups are ongoing now, and the program will start in about a little more than a couple months here, but seats are limited. And so if it's something you're interested in, I would highly recommend that you grab your seat so that you know that you have it. We do also offer this program again in the fall, so if this timing doesn't work out for you, we'd love to see you in the fall as well. Thank you so much, Anne-Marie.
You're welcome. It's good to be here.
Yeah, thank you. And you've reinvigorated me in my communication effort back with our teams. So I'm going to take that back to the office on Monday morning. Thank you very much, everybody. We're going to end there, and we hope you have a wonderful day.
Thanks. Bye.